Megan lay on her bed, her phone glowing softly in the dark, casting a pale halo onto her pillow. Outside her window, Austin's night was alive, distant traffic humming, cicadas singing under the thick Texas air. But inside, her world was silent, except for the gentle sound of Ethan's voice playing in her latest voice message. Thousands of miles away, dawn was just breaking over Toronto, and somewhere in that new day, Ethan was waking up. Their story hadn't started with distance. In fact, it had started with something so simple, so ordinary, that neither of them had thought much of it at first. Two interns, strangers in a foreign city, thrown together by chance. Dubai had been the kind of place that made you feel invincible, a glittering desert mirage where even brief encounters felt like destiny knocking. Megan met Ethan at a rooftop cafe, both of them juggling iced coffees and laptops, forced to share a table when the place filled up. He had smiled, and it was the kind of smile that reached his eyes, the kind that made her forget her own nervousness. They were supposed to be temporary friends. Two people passing time before real life called them home. But Summer had other plans. For 3 months, they wandered Dubai's souks and skyscrapers, trading secrets over shawarma, stealing moments in between office hours, and watching the sun dissolve into the sea like melting gold. Megan had never believed in love at first sight. But this wasn't love at first sight. It was love at the 1,000th glance, in the quiet moments between laughter and silence, when she realized she didn't just like Ethan, she trusted him. The last night was the hardest. Ethan's flight to Toronto left before dawn, Megan's to Austin just a few hours later. They stood on the edge of the marina, the air thick with unsaid things. Neither of them asked the question they both feared. What happens next? They hadn't planned to stay in touch. Long-distance relationships were romantic in theory, impossible in practice, or so they thought. But love, it turns out, is a stubborn creature. It sneaks into the spaces between logic and longing, making a home out of hope. At first, it was just occasional texts, photos of Austin sunsets, videos of Toronto snowstorms, little things, harmless things. Then came the phone calls, hours unraveling between them like silk, voices becoming the only touch they had. Time zones were nothing compared to the pull between them. Megan would stay up until 3 a.m. just to hear about Ethan's day. Ethan would set alarms to wake up at strange hours just to catch Megan before her morning commute. They tried to make it romantic. Virtual dinners with candles burning on both sides of the world, surprise care packages filled with inside jokes, playlists they curated for each other, one song at a time. Every mile between them was a test, and they passed them all for a while. But no matter how sweet long-distance love has teeth, there were days when the screen felt like a wall instead of a window. Misunderstandings festered in the silence between calls. A missed FaceTime became a question mark. A short reply became a storm cloud. It was love, but it was also longing. The kind of longing that felt like hunger, like thirst, like something primal that no text or call could satisfy. The first big fight came on their 6-month anniversary. Megan had planned a surprise. She had Ethan's favorite meal delivered to his door, complete with a handwritten note tucked inside. But Ethan forgot. His class ran late, his mind was elsewhere, and by the time he called, the hurt in Megan's voice was sharper than any argument. "You forgot us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't forget us," Ethan said softly. Sometimes it hurts too much to remember." For 2 days, they didn't speak. Megan wandered Austin's crowded streets, feeling impossibly alone, even among strangers. Ethan sat in his small apartment, watching snow pile up on his windowsill, wondering if love could survive silence. But love, real love, has a way of finding cracks to bloom through. They found their way back, not with apologies, but with offerings. Ethan sent Megan a video of the first snowfall, the one he had forgotten to show her. Megan sent Ethan a recording of the street musician outside her office, playing the same song they had once danced to in Dubai. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was persistent. They made rules, gentle, necessary rules, to hold them together. Weekly video calls, even when work was exhausting. No disappearing after fights. Always saying goodnight, even if all they had left to say was a single word. They became fluent in the language of distance, learning how to hold each other without hands, how to comfort without touch. Seasons shifted, and so did they. Megan learned the patterns of Ethan's breath when he was anxious. Ethan learned the silence Megan needed when she was overwhelmed. They built a fragile, beautiful world between them, woven from messages and missed calls, from laughter and longing, from the faith that love could stretch across oceans and still survive. But even the strongest love can't live forever in pixels. One day, they asked the question they had always avoided. What happens next? Could Megan leave Austin? Could Ethan leave Toronto? Was love enough to bridge not just miles, but whole lives? The answers didn't come easily, but the asking mattered. Because love isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to stay anyway. 18 months after their last night in Dubai, Megan stood at Toronto Pearson Airport, her heart a frantic drumbeat beneath her coat. She had saved for months, rearranged her life, and crossed oceans for this. The chance to see if love could survive the real world. Not texts, not calls, just them. Then, there he was. Ethan stood just past the gate, holding a sign that said, "Welcome home, Megan." His smile was a little shyer, his hair a little longer, but his eyes, they were exactly the same. She ran to him, the world around them blurring into nothing. The first touch was awkward and perfect, trembling and true. They stood there, in the middle of everything, hearts racing against time zones and fear, and knew they had crossed the distance. Love hadn't been easy. It had been wild and painful, thrilling and fragile. But standing there with his arms finally around her, Megan knew some distances are worth crossing. Some hearts once found are worth holding on to, even across the miles.